What's up, my friend? Welcome back to Finding Direction. I am looking forward to diving in this week with you as we go into another bonus episode this week where it's just going to be me having a conversation with you all around how do you find your purpose and maximize living in that purpose more every single day. And what we're going to dive into today is 5 keys to start connecting and building relationships like a pro. All right, one more time, 5 keys to start connecting and building relationships like a pro. And I want to sort of pre-frame this conversation with you and letting you know that I myself never, ever, ever thought I would be doing a podcast like this in my life as I grew up. If you asked me 10 years ago, hey, Stu, are you ever going to have an episode where you talk about relationships and connecting and those types of things? I would tell you that you were talking crazy. And the reason that I would say that to you is because I grew up, and again, if you've been hanging out with us on the podcast for a bit, you probably know that I grew up as the shy, the quiet kid, the kid that definitely wasn't trying to connect or build relationships with people. I was just trying to do my own thing and kind of stay in my own space. And eventually I realized the beauty in all the incredible aspects of connecting with people and building relationships with people and just the richness that it adds to your life. And I became obsessed with it. And I've learned some things through, I'd say, about a decade now of experiences that taught me about connecting in relationships. And now I am someone who is extraordinarily good at it. So I want to let you know that whether you're listening to this and you're going, Stu, I am so good at this, and you're just going to be telling me everything I already know. Or if you're listening to this and going, Stu, you know what, I can relate. And I kind of feel like, I'm not the best communicator, the connector. I'm not the best at relationships. And I don't know if I can get there. I want to let either of you know, both of you know, that this episode today is going to help you strengthen your connection and your relationship abilities as we dive into the 5 keys that you need to know. And also, there's going to be one little bonus one I'm going to give you at the end. If you stick around till the end, there's going to be a little extra secret sauce I'm going to put on the top for you. And obviously, if you tune into the last episode, last week, the last bonus episode, it was all about how connection is more important than credibility, how relationships are more important than resumes. So this week, I wanted to make sure I could dive in and give you so many tangible, real things you can do to start strengthening your connection and your relationship building abilities and start doing it like a pro. All right. So now that we got into some of the goodness, I want to dive into some of the greatness that we're going to talk about today. And it's those 5 keys to start connecting and building relationships like a pro. Now, the first key that you want to know when it comes to connecting and relationships, this is probably one of the most important ones that you need to come into this with, is the number one key is to be genuine. And I know you may be hearing this, you're going, what do you mean genuine? Like that's it? Yeah, that's the most important thing. Right? As you build connection and as you build relationships with people, the most important aspect of all of this is you have to be genuine. You have to be real. You got to be raw. You got to be authentically you. You have to be genuine. All right. You got to be genuinely curious and you have to be genuinely caring. All right. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you're not genuine, nothing matters. If you're not genuine, nothing matters, right? It's like you could spend, I learned this from Dale Carnegie. He said you could spend a decade trying to get people to be interested in you, and you'll make less friends than if you spent a week trying to be genuinely interested in other people, right? Don't try to get people to think you're interesting. Be interested in other people. So the first and most important thing, I'm going to say it over and over and over, but it's be genuine. You got to be authentic as you go into a relationship, into building a connection, whether it's professionally or personally. The most important thing that you have to do is you got to be genuine. All right. That's numero uno. Now, the second key is be an incredible listener. Be an incredible, be a professional listener, actually. They say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. because you're supposed to listen more than you're supposed to talk, right? Sometimes, we want to be the talker and say everything and be so smart and, all that. But the reality is, if you want to be great at connecting and building relationships, you got to flip that on its head, the idea that you want to be talking the most, and you have to be an incredible listener. You got to be a professional listener. And I'll give you real quick a sort of story of how they found this out. They did research on this actually about, connecting and building relationships. And one of the studies they did was they took one person and they put him in an airplane. We'll call him, for this example, Steve. And they put Steve in an airport, or in an airplane, excuse me. And Steve's whole job was the entire flight to have a conversation and to get to know the person sitting next to him. And eventually they had this plane flight. They went from the West Coast to the East Coast. It was about a 5-ish hour flight. And after they got off the flight, Steve got off the plane. He went and, went back to wherever he was going. And then they took the person sitting next to Steve when they walked off the plane and they said, "Hey, we're doing this quick survey. We would love it if we could just ask you, a couple questions, take 20 minutes of your time. We'll give you $100. And, obviously who doesn't like a free $100? So the woman that he was sitting next to goes, "Okay, yeah, I'll answer the questions." And they started to ask her questions such as, how was your experience flying and sitting next to the person on the plane? And all of a sudden, she started to go off about this person. She was like, "Man, the person I sat next to, they were so nice. They were so caring. They were such an amazing person." And they started to continue asking questions about Steve, right? He was the guy sitting next to her. And she couldn't help but just say incredible things about Steve and who he was and how amazing it was. And as they got a little further down the questions, they then asked her, "Okay, what was the name of the person you were sitting next to?" And she began to sit there and think, or stand there and think. And all of a sudden she was like, "Wait, I actually didn't, I never got the person's name." She never got Steve's name. And then they asked her, "Okay, well, can you tell me where was this guy next to you from? Where's he from?" And again, she began to sat there or stand there, and again, she began to realize, okay, I don't even know where he was from. And they continued to ask her more questions about Steve. And ultimately what they found out is she didn't know anything about Steve. And so what they took away from this study is Steve's job going onto the plane. His only job was the entire plane flight to get this woman he was sitting next to talk about herself. His whole job was in this study to not talk about himself, to not mention himself, to not say anything about himself, but to simply get the person next to him to talk about themselves. And what they got from the study was that people fall in love with people that let them talk about themselves. People fall in love with people that are great listeners. People don't fall in love with, for example, if we switched it and Steve's job was just to talk about himself the whole time, she'd probably get off the flight and go, he was kind of, like loved himself a little too much. And he was, all about himself, big ego, because he just talked about himself the whole time. But because he simply listened, she really felt a genuine connection and relationship with him. Right. So again, you want to understand that building connection and building relationships, the key is go be a professional listener. Don't try to talk about yourself and tell everybody all the amazing things that are true about you, but go to be a listener. Remember, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that leads me perfectly into the third key to start connecting and building relationships like a pro. And the third key is to ask great questions. To ask great questions, right? If you want to connect with someone at a deep level, if you want to build a great relationship with someone, one of the secrets is you have to ask really good questions. And honestly, you also have to ask bad questions, right? You want to be ultimately just a professional question asker. So if we go back to Steve for a second, when he was on this plane, what did Steve do the whole time? He asked this woman that he was sitting next to questions about herself. Hey, where are you from? What do you do for work? How long have you been there? What do you have family? What do you love about your family, right? All he did was ask her questions, and that's how you get people to talk about themselves more. right? And we mentioned this a little bit on the last episode, but it's like, you really want to remember that people's favorite thing in the world is themselves, and their favorite thing to talk about is themselves. So if you can ask great questions that prompt people to talk about themselves and the things that they love, they are going to start feeling even more connected with you, and they're going to really, really want to have even a deeper relationship with you, whether that's professionally or personally. All right, so that's number 3. Ask questions. Be a professional question asker. Now, the fourth key to start connecting and building relationships like a pro is you want to be someone who's always trying to add value. All right, be someone who's going to relationships, who's going to connect, to be a giver, not a getter, right? What happens a lot of the time, if you go try to build a relationship or you try to connect with someone, and this happens, I would say, more so professionally, but you can go to someone and you can say, hey, you do this thing. Can you help me with this? Can you give me something? Right? Can you help me? And the reality is, if you want to build a deep connection with someone, you want to build a deep relationship with someone, you want to be the type of person that when you have a conversation with someone, and even when they think about having a conversation with you, they go, man, XYZ, right? Whatever you think, insert your name. They go, your name, you, is just such a good person. Every time we chat or we catch up or we do something professionally, they're always seeing how they can help me. Right? They're never coming to this and seeing how can I help them. They're always seeing how can they help me. So you want to go to relationships to give. You want to go to add value. And sometimes you may know the way that you add value, right? And you go in and you add the value in the way which maybe you've learned about them. Another way is simply asking them if there's anything you can do to add value to their life, right? Every conversation I have with pretty much anybody, especially professionally, every time someone comes on the podcast, at the end, the last question I ask them after we're done recording is every single time I say, hey, is there anything else I can do to add value to anything that you're working on? Obviously, if I know them and some things I can help with particularly, I'll add that value. But if I don't, I'll ask them, is there anything I can do to add value or support you with what you're working on? And there's a sense that you get from people that when you're coming to add value, they want to be around you more, right? Because you're going to give. And even if it's not professionally, right? Let's say you're building friendships. Another way you could add value is maybe you always go and when you're hanging out with your friends, the value you bring is your energy. Maybe you're someone that, when you come around your friends, you're always making everybody laugh. And the value you're bringing to that friendship is, man, you just have a good time and make people laugh. You make people enjoy the present moment. That's value, right? Maybe another way you add value is, you're always putting together trips for your friends. That's the way you add value, right? But ultimately, as we, again, look at this fourth key to really keep it succinctly, if you want to be a beautiful connector, if you want to be an amazing connector, someone who's amazing at building deep relationships, go to give, don't go to get. All right, be a giver, not a getter. Now, the fifth key that we're going to look at today, and this is going to be the fifth and final key before we dive into the extra little bonus secret sauce I got for you today. But the fifth and final key, and I think this is maybe one of the most important aspects of all of this. I would say next to being genuine, this one ties for really the secret of the secret to starting connecting and building relationships like a pro. And it's to find a common ground of interest. Find a common ground of interest, right? Now, people's favorite thing is them in their world is themselves, like we spoke about. And at the same time, because people's favorite thing in the world is themselves, people like themselves. And they want to be around people like themselves because they're basically thinking, man, if I like me and I think I'm cool, and I found out that you're actually like me, well, if I like me and I think I'm cool and you're like me, well, then you must be pretty cool too. Right? That's what unconsciously starts to go through people's heads. So let me give you a quick example on this one. Let's say I want you to think of a moment in your life where maybe you were traveling. Maybe you were going to a different country. Maybe you were going to a different state. And in the example I'll share with you, and obviously think of your own experience at the same time. Let's say we had someone that was traveling to, let's say, Egypt. And this person's traveling to Egypt, and see if you've ever had an experience like this, right? You're traveling somewhere else in the world, and our example here, the person traveling to Egypt, they're going throughout their day. Maybe they're going on a tour. And all of a sudden, while they're on their tour, they start sparking up a conversation with someone. And in the conversation, all of a sudden, our friend that's going to Egypt says to the other person, "Oh, I grew up in this little town in the Bay Area near San Francisco, and it's called Danville." And all of a sudden, the person that they're having the conversation with is like, "Oh my God, I am from Danville." Have you ever had something like that happen where you were on a trip, you're having a conversation with someone, and all of a sudden in this random conversation, you said something or they said something, and all of a sudden you both realized at the same time, like, "Oh my God, we have this thing in common." And as soon as you started to realize you have this thing in common, it's like your walls came down. You felt like they're your best friend. You feel like you've known them for 30 years, longer than you've even been alive. And all of a sudden you feel so deeply connected with them. I'm guessing you've had an experience like this in your life. And what I really want you to grasp from this is what happened when they found out they were from the same place is they found out that they had a common ground of interest. They found out that they had things in common, and that brought them closer together. That brought them closer together. So as you go build relationships and as you build connection with people, whether it's professionally or personally, you want to constantly be looking at what are things that we have in common? What are common grounds of interest that we have? Maybe it's for sports. Maybe it's for things you like to do professionally. Maybe it's you both like snowboarding. Maybe it's you both love this one TV show. Maybe it's that you both love going on hikes, right? Whatever it is, find a common ground of interest. Find something that you have in relation to them. And that is one of the biggest things you can do to build a deeper connection and deeper relationships with people, right? Let me give you one last example in this. Think of your best friend for a second. And as you think of your best friend, ask yourself, how many common grounds of interest do you have with them? And my guess, and not just a guess, but what I know is from working with, thousands of people doing this, is that your best friend and you have multiple common grounds of interest. For an example, maybe you both like sports. Maybe you both like skiing. Maybe you both like reading. Maybe you both like the Lakers, right? Whatever it is, you have multiple common grounds of interest. And that is why you feel so close and so connected with them, because you have multiple common grounds of interest. So I'm not going to keep going with this one. So we can be, somewhat of I'm not even going to say it's a short episode, but I'm going to keep this to a close here. You want to find a common ground of interest with people. All right. One way you do it is through words. Another really simple way that you can do it, I guess not simple, more complex, but another way you can do it as well is with body language or tonality, right? So if someone talks really softly and they whisper all the time, when you go connect with them, whisper and talk like the same way they talk, right? If someone talks really loud, then when you have a conversation with them, talk really loud, right? If someone uses their body and they cross their arms when you're having a conversation, cross your arms. All right. I'm not going to go too much into the details in the dirt in this one, but that's another way you can find common ground of interest is one, you can do it with words, right? Whether that's, figuring out, hey, we both like this or that. And another way you can find that common ground of interest is with your body and your body language and your tonality. All right. So those are the 5 keys. And as promised, because you stuck around until the end of this episode, I'm going to give you the 6th kind of cherry on top on how you want to think about every relationship, every conversation, every connection, every interaction you have with another human being. And if you have this going through your brain, consciously or unconsciously, as you go to connect and build relationships with people, this is the silver thread that brings everything else we said together. And the silver thread is that you will leave every relationship and every conversation that you have either better than it was when you got there, or you'll leave it worse than it was when you got there. Think about that for a second. In every conversation you have, in every connection you have with someone, in every time you engage in a relationship, you leave that conversation, you leave that relationship, and you either leave that person better off in their life, or you leave that person in a worse place in their life. You do not leave and someone stays in the same place. Doesn't happen. You either leave that conversation, you either leave that connection, that relationship, and they go, man, I feel a little bit better. Or you leave that conversation, they go, man, I kind of feel like crap. So what you want to ask yourself is right now, I want you to do a check-in. And I want you to ask yourself, and the majority of connections you have and the majority of relationships you have, are you the type of person that when you leave that relationship, that conversation, that connection, that interaction you had with someone, are you right now the type of person that the majority of the time leave that person feeling better? Or the majority of time, are you leaving that interaction and someone's feeling worse? That's what it's all about, right? Are you the type of person that comes to an interaction and you're always nagging, talking about your problems, talking about how things suck in life? Or are you the type of person who's who's genuinely caring, who's being a good listener, who's asking great questions, who's trying to add value, who's finding common grounds of interest, who's leaving that person better energetically? But if you understand this one piece and you ask yourself, hey, what are you doing right now? Are you leaving things better when you left, or are you things worse when you left? And if it's worse, there's an important conversation you need to have with yourself, right? Use some of these 5 keys so you leave the connection and the relationship, you leave the interaction better off. And if you already are like, man, when I leave, people are better, amazing, congratulations, and keep doing it. All right. And use these other 5 aspects to enhance how you leave that relationship. All right. So the secret sauce we're putting on top is, remember, you want to leave a relationship, a connection, a conversation, an interaction better than it was when you got there. You're leaving, and people are either energetically in a better place or they're in a worse place. So your goal, if you want to build deeper connection, deeper relationships, is make it a goal of yours to leave those connections, conversations, interactions better, in a better place energetically than when you got there. All right. So those are the 5 keys, my friend, to start connecting and building relationships like a pro. One more time, let's go through them real quick. Number 1, be genuine, be genuinely curious and caring. Number 2, be an incredible listener. Number 3, ask great questions. Number 4, be someone who's always trying to add value. Number 5, find those common grounds of interest. And finally, that secret extra sauce on the top is make sure you leave the relationship in a better place than when you got there. All right. That is what we got for you on the episode this week. And as we bring some more of these bonus episodes to you, where it's you and me just having a direct conversation, I would love to hear from you from the deepest place of my heart and what you are enjoying, what you are liking, what you are wanting more of, so that I can make this better for you. All right. Any way that I can do that to make sure you have a better experience, or other things you want to learn about, other things you want to pick up. We're going to be doing some more of these solo episodes where you and I have a direct conversation. So let me know how I can continue to support and serve you living in your purpose and finding your purpose and then living it in it at the highest level possible. All right. You could send me a DM on Instagram. Let me know what you want more of, what you like. If you want to go to iTunes Store and leave us a review, that's an incredible way to do it as well. But let me know. Let's have a conversation. Let's make this a place where you come every single week and say, I'm going to get better. I'm going to live my purpose. I'm going to find it. I'm going to grow into the next level of what my purpose looks like, because we're always growing as human beings. And let's do it together. All right. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I've enjoyed our conversation. I hope you are leaving this conversation more energetically charged. I hope you're leaving this conversation energetically in a better place. And more importantly, I also hope you take some of the things that we've just spoken about and you go start applying them in your life. Because remember, nothing happens in your life if you're just learning it and you're not applying it. So go out there, go take action on some of these things. And if you want to continue to hang out, I got another episode coming up shortly after this with a guest, and we're going to have a conversation all about their journey of finding purpose, living in their purpose, maximizing their purpose. So if you want to stick around, stay here. It'll queue up in just a moment. And other than that, my friend, one last time, I want to say thanks for your time. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful, outstanding, unbelievably delicious, I'm going to say it, yes, a delicious day, my friend. Go out there, make an amazing day, And I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.